When a director of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country looks straight at Congress and says, "You're failing, not me," that's not confidence, that's a warning. And the moment those words left Patel's mouth, the room didn't just go quiet, something shifted. You could almost feel the oxygen leave the hearing. Because this wasn't a routine oversight session. This was a live demonstration of what happens when institutions built to protect democracy start bending toward the will of the powerful. And what unfolded between Patel and Representative Madeleine Dean wasn't noise, wasn't theatrics. This was a pressure point snapping in real time. If you pay attention to what was said, and especially what wasn't.
He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process. And he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the
topics.
book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times, and you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury.
Veracity.
Tell the American
You didn't
people how
know.
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You
Have
didn't
the
know.
audacity to actually
So,
put the
all
facts
right, then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the,
failing,
excuse me,
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
You begin to see exactly why so many people are worried that the FBI, for the first time in modern history, may be slipping away from independence and drifting into something far more dangerous. Dean didn't walk into that hearing to trade insults. She walked in holding receipts, patterns, and a fear that the country wasn't just dealing with mismanagement, but with an agency slowly being re-engineered into a political tool. She started with the simplest truth: words matter. Culture matters. And when leadership, especially federal leadership, uses language that frames accountability as revenge and government service as a battlefield, the entire agency absorbs that tone like a sponge. That's why she focused on Patel's own book, a book he proudly features with a quote on its cover calling it a blueprint. To Patel, it's just an appendix of names. To the president, it's a roadmap. And to Dean, it's a list of targets that suspiciously lines up with people who've suddenly found themselves facing investigations, executive orders, or aggressive federal action. It's the kind of thing that, even when unproven, raises alarms because history tells us these things never start loudly. They start quietly, in the margins, in the footnotes, in the appendices no one was supposed to look at closely. But Dean wasn't relying on symbolism alone. She pointed to patterns: universities cut off, law firms pressured, individuals investigated after criticizing the administration. Actions that, when isolated, could look like coincidence, but when listed together begin to form a picture no one wants to see. She described it as a revenge tour. And you could see Patel flinch, not because the phrase offended him, but because it hit closer to the truth than he wanted to admit under oath. He refused the premise, but what he couldn't refuse were the examples that came next. Dean brought up the Wisconsin judge, a case still sending shockwaves through the legal community. A judge who asked IC agents for something basic, a judicial warrant, not an administrative one. He didn't resist. He didn't break the law. He followed the Constitution. And yet, at dawn on April 25th, FBI agents arrested him. The footage spreading online shows the judge standing confused, asking why a lawful question had turned him into a criminal suspect. Dean called it exactly what it looked like: escalation. A terrifying escalation. Because a democracy doesn't lock up judges for obeying the law. Even suggesting it would be outrageous. Doing it is something else entirely. Patel brushed it off. He pretended the arrest was routine. But Dean pressed harder. And that's when the hearing shifted from oversight to confrontation. She reminded Patel that she had served as an impeachment manager, that she had prosecuted one of the most politically explosive cases in modern history. And she asked a question no one expected her to ask publicly. When can I expect the FBI at my door? You could hear the oxygen drop. Because it wasn't a joke. It wasn't exaggeration. It was a fear, a real fear, that an agency with the power to arrest, interrogate, and Detain could turn those tools against critics. Patel didn't respond with reassurance. He didn't say, "Never, because the FBI is independent." He didn't say, "The Constitution protects you." He didn't even say, "That would be inappropriate." He fired back with hostility, accused her of lying for political gain, and demanded she prove he committed a crime. It was emotional. It was personal. It was defensive. It was everything a director of a federal agency should never be while under oath. Because the leader of an institution with guns, warrants, and federal authority cannot behave like a pundit. They cannot bark at lawmakers like they're debating on live television. Their job, especially in public, is to calm fears, not ignite them. But Patel wasn't done. When Dean confronted him about allegedly misleading Congress during his confirmation hearing, questions about whistleblower claims, questions about his denial of involvement in personnel actions, questions about appearing multiple times on a show hosted by a conspiracy theorist with a documented history of hateful content, Patel didn't answer. He attacked her character instead. He dodged the substance. He turned the spotlight around. And when a federal director refuses to answer questions about truthfulness, credibility, and memory, it doesn't strengthen public trust. It shatters it. What makes this entire moment so revealing isn't just the argument. It's what it exposes underneath. Agencies like the FBI don't crumble overnight. They erode slowly. Through small choices, subtle shifts, quiet messages sent internally. When leaders praise loyalty instead of integrity, agents notice. When investigations of critics ramp up, career officials hesitate. When whistleblowers say one thing and leadership says another, morale fractures. And when a director writes a book that appears, to some, like a list of rival factions, it sends a signal even if none was intended. Inside any agency, culture is shaped not by memos alone, but by what people believe leadership truly wants. Dean understood this. She didn't make it personal. She made it institutional. Her concern wasn't about losing a political fight. It was about losing something far more important: independence. Once an agency as powerful as the FBI starts drifting towards serving political interests instead of public ones, the consequences are enormous. Investigations start to feel selective. Federal power starts to feel pointed. And agents who've spent decades building reputations for nonpartisan work begin to question whether their careers still align with the mission they signed up for. And then came the budget exchange, an overlooked moment that actually revealed more than anything else. Patel was defending a request more than $1 billion higher than what the White House proposed. Dean asked him directly, "Will you go to the president and sort out this gulf?" It wasn't a budget question. It was a loyalty question, a pressure test, a way to see whether Patel aligned his priorities with public need or political leadership. His answer? He dodged again, insisted he was defending the Constitution, and implied she was the problem. It was defensive, it was evasive, and it was telling, because budgets are priorities. Priorities shape power. And when a budget mismatch becomes a fight between the director and the administration, it becomes clear something deeper is happening behind closed doors if you strip away the insults, the tension, the dramatic moments. Here's what this hearing really revealed. A federal agency is being pulled between two competing forces: constitutional independence and political expectation. Dean wasn't warning about today. She was warning about tomorrow, about slow shifts that become permanent, about norms that erode so gradually we stop noticing until it's too late. Oversight isn't theater. It's the last line of defense against unchecked authority. And when a director refuses transparency, attacks questioners, or can't commit, clearly and publicly, to equal protection under the law, the system shakes. Maybe just a little. But little cracks become big ones. That's why this moment matters. Not because of who raised their voice, or who insulted whom, or who won the exchange. It matters because it showed what it looks like when an institution meant to serve the people begins answering to power instead of principle. It matters because agents inside are watching. Judges are watching. Whistleblowers are watching. And ordinary Americans, the ones who rely on federal fairness, are watching too. This wasn't a meltdown. It was a warning signal, a subtle one, but unmistakable that if you care about institutions staying independent, if you care about law being applied equally, if you care about agencies not becoming political weapons, then moments like this are the ones you pay attention to, because they show you where the future might be heading. If you want more breakdowns like this, more deep dives into hearings the media glosses over, more stories that reveal what's really going on behind the microphones. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And share this video with someone who thinks these hearings don't matter. They matter more than ever.